Hello, a very warm good evening to all of you and welcome to Unacademy. Welcome to the second lecture for the portion of Environment Current Affairs from the time of January to May 2024. Now, this is the second lecture. Yesterday, we have had a discussion about the various different important concepts and topics which have been in news for this particular period. And along with that, some of the species which have been in news. Now, as we had discussed yesterday itself, today we are going to discuss some of the reports and important reports and the findings which have been released. For example, the status of leopard population in India, the methane tracker, and so on. And along with that, the protected regions, some of the protected areas which have been in news, along with a couple of important species as well. So that is going to be our overall discussion for today. If you want to download the PDF of the entire session, then after the session, you can join the Telegram channel, and there I shall be putting up the PDF very shortly. So that is the case of the discussion that we are going to have today. And along with that, we are going to discuss the practice questions as well, a kind of a sample question about what you can expect to be thrown in your ballpark at the time of the prelims exam. So accordingly, do advise and suggest to you that along with the discussion, do take a look and think about what can be the answer of these multiple choice questions that will help you prepare for the prelims exam. Now, let us take a look at the first topic of the day. That is the Conference of Parties number 14 to Conservation of Migratory Species was held. The CMS, or the Conservation of Migratory Species. This is what is also referred to as the Bonn Convention. Now, this particular convention was arrived at when? By the way, what is a convention? Convention is coming together of various different parties or member nations where they aim to achieve a particular goal. That is a convention where you have some of the legally binding measures, etc. also included. So that is associated with the convention. So here, when we talk about the Bonn Convention, it is referred to as the Convention of Migratory Species. This was arrived at in 1979. Now, what was the requirement or the necessity of this convention? The necessity was simple. It was understood that there are many different species which move from place A to place B. They migrate whenever the conditions become very harsh, climatic conditions, availability of food, availability of water, whenever that becomes very harsh, then the birds, marine species, even terrestrial organisms, they end up migrating over long distances to find shelter and food at some other place. After a season or two, then they get back to their original place. That is the migrational pattern. Now, let's suppose you are conserving the species in its place of origin, but then that same species is hunted at its place of destination. That will mean a decline in the population of the species. That is the reason why we need to have a kind of a convention where the species is protected in the entire range area. Now, the entire path covered by the species during that migratory route, the countries which are included in that path, that is also what is referred to as the range countries. Range countries. Now, what is this Conference of Parties? Conference of Party is the highest decision-making body for any particular convention. It meets regularly in order to decide upon the future course of action and also to rectify some of the issues which might have emerged in the entire protective mechanism. Now, this Conference of Parties for various different conventions are held at different time intervals. For example, when we talk about Convention for Climate Change, Conference of Parties is held annually. But here you observe the Conference of Parties number 14 was held in 2024. So think about it, a convention which was set up more than 3 decades back has the Conference of Parties number 14, which tells you what? That this is not an annual phenomena. This Conference of Parties to CMS happens every 2 to 3 years in different geological and geographical divisions of the entire world. For example, the Eurasian region, the African region, like that, the aim is to have these Conference of Parties to be held in different geographical regions. However, it is not always the case that from one region to another it will necessarily shift, but that is the endeavor. So here, if we take a look at it, the 14th Conference of Parties was held where? In Samarkand, Uzbekistan. Also something that you would have read about in your history classes associated with the Mughals. So that is where it was held. Now there were certain decisions and key highlights which were taken there. But very briefly, the entire paradigm of these Conference of Parties, or the entire aspect of this Conference of Party or Convention on Migratory Species, you see, in order to conserve the species are divided into two appendices, two groups, right? The various different species, they are divided into two different groups, Appendix 1 and Appendix 2. So which species will be listed in Appendix 1 and which of them in Appendix 2? There is a list of multiple different species. You should not try to learn that, and you possibly even cannot learn that before the exam. So don't try to do that. Just understand the framing of it. Right. For example, when we talk about CITES, or Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Flora and Fauna, that convention has got the species divided into three appendices. Here in the Bonn Convention, you have the species divided into two appendices. On the basis of priority of conservation required, accordingly the species are grouped. For example, those species which require urgent attention, and if you don't conserve those species, they are at a threat of extinction, they are put under Appendix 1. So the migratory species that are classified as endangered with high risk of extinction and urgent international cooperation is required. That is Appendix 1. And Appendix 2 lists the other species that would benefit significantly. So not exactly at the verge of extinction, but if conservation is carried out, those species will benefit. Now, is India a member of this convention or not? What do you think? This particular, basically when we talk about India, India is a member of this particular convention. Okay. Now here, India has signed a non-legally binding MOU with CMS on conservation and management of various different species like Siberian cranes, marine turtles, dugongs, and raptors, right? And one mistake which many of the candidates do, when they think about migratory species, they always end up believing that the migratory species are going to be only birds or aviary species. That is not the case. The marine species, they migrate over large distances in order to reproduce, in order to get availability and accessibility to food requirements. But at the same time, when we talk about even terrestrial species, many of the terrestrial organisms, they have also been known to migrate over large distances, particularly in the region of African savanna. In the entire area of Serengeti, Masai Mara, the tropical savanna in the region of Africa, this migrational pattern is something which is quite common. Now here, India also provides temporary shelter to various different migratory species. In which particular season will migratory species flock to India in greater numbers? Always in the winter season. Because in winter season, the species, they face very harsh conditions in their home territories around Central Asia, in the region around Siberia, and due to frozen grounds and frozen water bodies, many of the species, they migrate to tropical countries, and there you will have the presence of these particular species as well. So here, and that is where India provides a perfect feeding ground. So Amur falcon, bar-headed geese, black-necked cranes, marine turtles, dugongs, humpback whales, there are many migratory species which do come to India. Here, what you have to keep in mind from this particular portion for your prelims, India has signed an MOU for which of the species? And secondly, is that MOU legally binding or not? These two particular facts you have to keep in mind. Okay? Now, after this, when we take a look at the key highlights of the Conference of Parties. Now you see, adoption of listing of various different species, multiple species were discussed upon, and you had members from different parts of the planet. All of them put up the arguments for the conservation of various different species. So from Eurasian lynx to Peruvian pelican, so you have a host of various species which migrate, right? So all of them were discussed. It was discussed about the increased collaboration amongst the range countries. What are range countries? Those countries where the migratory species end up moving through. Those are known as the range countries, and focus on threats to biodiversity, right? What are the threats to biodiversity for the species? Typically, if you take a look at it, first threat is fragmentation and degradation of habitat. And when we talk about the birds, migratory birds, you see destruction of wetlands in particular, or incursion of urbanization and urban spaces in the water body region. All these, they become a part of the destruction of habitat. Or let's suppose you had a large water body, over a period of time, solid waste dumping has happened or municipal waste has been disposed. Now that will reduce the population of fishes in that area because the water will turn out to be hypoxic due to the process of eutrophication. What is eutrophication? Overloading of the water bodies by nutrients. That is what is referred to as eutrophication. Whenever the water body gets overloaded with nutrients, then the amount of dissolved oxygen in the water bodies, that starts to reduce. Because when these nutrients are present, nutrients such as phosphate, nitrates, etc. Now, where do you get these? On the face of it, when you hear the term nutrients, we always think about it in the positive context. But you have to understand that this is basically the presence of inorganic materials or organic materials. For example, untreated sewage. For example, when we talk about, let's suppose, the presence of agricultural runoff, that is where nitrates get supplied. Untreated sewage is from where phosphates get supplied. Now, all of these can lead to the sudden growth of algae population. What is the harmful algal bloom? Now, it has been well known that in many parts of our country, for example, Deepor Beel in Assam, which is a Ramsar site, which is a wetland having accorded a greater level of importance. But in Deepor Beel, the region which used to be the center of migratory species, the number of migratory species coming there had declined owing to the pollution levels, right? So many of the times it does happen that when there is pollution, outbreak of diseases, etc., the amount of migratory species coming into that region goes for a sharp dip. Okay. Now, here in this conference of party, even the importance of Central Asian flyway, that was also discussed. Now, what is a flyway? Flyway is again something which has been in use for the past couple of years. So there are chances of questions being asked in the prelims. So what are the flyways? Flyways are typically the routes adopted by migratory species of birds when they move over large distances. Okay. So here, when we talk about the flyways, I will show you the entire imagery as well. Now here, when we talk about the other outcomes of the conference of party, there was also a discussion that the species need protection from fish aggregators, bycatch, vessel strikes, etc. Bycatch as a terminology had been stressed upon in the final report which was generated out of the conference of parties. What is a bycatch? So this is a term that you don't come across very often. What is a bycatch? So let's suppose you are a fisherman who has gone out into the sea to catch certain varieties of fishes. You have laid out the net to catch all the varieties or all the fish that you can. But along with that, you have caught or you have trapped certain, let's suppose, turtles. You did not mean to trap turtles, but the turtles have been trapped and consequently, maybe they will die. So that is what is a bycatch, right? An unwanted catching or trapping of certain species in the marine environment. So this is also leading to large-scale destruction of the marine biodiversity, and particularly species of turtles, they are impacted. The olive ridley turtle being one of those. Leatherback turtle is too big to be caught in these traps, but then the olive ridleys, they get trapped particularly in the zone of the Bay of Bengal, right? So for various species like dolphins, sharks, marine turtles and seabirds, that becomes a kind of a collateral damage. Now, along with that, here, if you take a look at the flyways, so Conference of Parties played a key role in giving recognition to the Central Asian flyway for migratory birds that stretches from Siberia all the way to the region of Maldives. So here, if you take a look at the major flyways, you have to keep in mind the major flyways, right? That can be listed in the multiple choice question, that which of these are flyways. So accordingly, you have to keep in mind. So here, first of all, this is the Central Asian flyway, which becomes important, right? This is where majority of the species from Central Asia, from Siberia, they come up to India all the way till Maldives, and then they return back when the summer conditions come. Then you have what is the West Asian East African flyway. This also passes through the region of India and moves all the way to Madagascar and also eastern and southern part of Africa. But majority of the species of the birds, they are having a destination close to either Reunion Islands, around the Mascarene Islands, or around the region of Madagascar. Then you have the East Asian Australasian flyway. These are the three flyways which in a way partially or completely end up covering the country of India. So these are the three flyways which become important. Then other than that, you have the West Pacific, the Pacific Americas, Atlantic Americas, Mississippi Americas, Black Sea or Mediterranean flyway, and East Atlantic flyway. These are some of the important flyways. Now, don't try to ratify the mapping of these individual flyways. Nobody is going to ask you that. What you have to know, which are the major flyways, and more importantly, if you cannot retain all of them, at least try to retain which are the flyways which pass through India. So three major flyways, they pass through India. One is the West Asian East African flyway, East Asian Australasian flyway, and Central Asian flyway. These three flyways should be kept in mind. Okay. Now let us take a look at the practice question which can be framed from here. So consider the following statements in the context of the conservation of migratory species. It was concluded as a result of the Stockholm Conference 1972. The Conference of Parties is held in different geographical regions. India has signed an MOU for the conservation of Siberian cranes and marine turtles. Take a look at it and let me know the correct answer. How exactly back to home migratory species, migratory birds, other species? So basically after the change of season, that is when the species, they tend to go back. Okay. So here, the first statement, was it concluded as a result of the Stockholm Conference 1972? No. Stockholm Conference was in 1972. This convention was passed in 1979. Okay, so there's a long time gap. The Conference of Parties is held in different geographical regions annually. This again is incorrect. It is not held annually. India has signed an MOU for Siberian cranes and marine turtles. That is correct. So here you have to find out which of the statements is or are incorrect. So the correct answer in this case will be B, that is 2, right? So please always take a look at whether correct or incorrect is being asked. Okay, this is where again majority of you will commit mistakes here, right? Now, coming to another important topic, that is the status of leopards in India 2022. The report was released by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change last year. So what is relevant for you to know here? Conservation status, obviously. The geographical regions where you will find the presence of leopards. Because the report had classified the various different types of or the various geographical divisions where you will find the leopard population. The reasons why in certain areas there is an increase, the reasons why in certain areas there is a decline. Okay. Now, Conference of Parties 16 that you saw, is for Convention on Biological Diversity. That is different. Okay, that happened in the month of October, November. So that is different. You had Conference of Parties number 29 to UNFCCC. So there are different Conference of Parties for many conventions. There are different conventions out there in the world. Each of them have their Conference of Parties. So don't ratify the Conference of Parties by the number. Rather than that, take a look at for which convention, what was the Conference of Party, and what is the key extract. Okay. Now here, when we talk about the status of leopards, so here, as compared to the last census report, it is carried out every 4 years. This is again something to keep in mind. Every 4 years. So as compared to the last one, there has been an increase in the leopard population, right? So according to the status of leopards in India, report 2022, there has been an increase. However, when we talk about that increase, it is not a secular increase in the sense that it has not increased uniformly in all different areas. In certain regions, there has been a decline as well. So it is important for us to identify in which region the population has actually increased and in which region the population has actually decreased. I will give you a table and a chart as well, which you can refer to. So here, if you take a look at the regions, the geographical regions where they are found, out of that, the central India and eastern Ghats will have the highest population of leopards. So leopard population, will it prefer very dense forest or will it prefer moderately dense and open forest? What do you think? Which is the natural habitat for leopard population? Very dense vegetation or moderately dense and open forest? Always, it will be moderately dense and open forest. Why? Because the leopards require an open space in order to hunt, in order to survive. So leopards will typically be found where the density of vegetation is not very high. Okay. That is the natural area for the leopard population. In the region of Western Ghats, in the region of the Tarai Belt, that is where the foliage is a bit dense. But having said that, when we talk about the Shivaliks, at one point of time, the Shivaliks were densely populated with the leopard population. Over a period of time, there has been conflict, man-animal conflict, there has been deforestation, and as a consequence of that, you remember yesterday we had talked about the Tarai Arc landscape. At one point of time in the entire Tarai Arc landscape region, leopard population used to be very high. But over a period of time, as systemic deforestation of the Tarai happened, the region, the natural biodiversity available for leopard, the natural habitat available for leopard started shrinking. Then it coincided with those habitats which are shared by the tigers. So leopard and tigers, when they share the same habitat, that means they will be competing for the same prey base. They will be competing for the same herbivores to consume. And as a consequence, because tiger conservation is given an effort, that is why the leopard population in the region of the Tarai Belt, in the belt of the Shivaliks, has experienced a decline. At least, this is the argument which is presented in the report, particularly by the forest officials in Uttarakhand, in particular around the region of Rajaji Tiger Reserve and National Park, because that is where in the Shivaliks, the leopard population has experienced a decline because of greater emphasis to Project Tiger and the convergence of the zone where the tiger population is to be found. So, after Central and Eastern Ghats, that is where it is followed by Western Ghats and the Shivalik Hills and the Gangetic Plains. You see, when you talk about Project Tiger has got various different impacts across the country. That is something where again you have to be prepared for the multiple choice question. Because in Madhya Pradesh, which has got the largest leopard population, in Madhya Pradesh, the forest officials have said that due to stricter implementation of Project Tiger norms, they could conserve the entire natural landscape, due to which even the leopard population benefited. So in Madhya Pradesh, Project Tiger is working for the benefit of the leopards, whereas in the region of the Shivaliks, it is working to the disadvantage. Why? Because in central India, you have large open spaces of this natural vegetation which is still present. Whereas in the region of the Shivaliks, that natural habitat is reducing and shrinking day by day. As a consequence of this, what happens? These leopards, when you destroy their natural habitat, that is when the man-animal conflicts tend to increase. And these are those kind of species, the leopards, they can even survive in the region of the semi-urban areas or the suburbs. That is why you will often find the leopards having an incursion into the urban habitat and the urban spaces. Many of them, they have an incursion, right? So state-wise, again important, Madhya Pradesh has got the largest population, followed by Maharashtra, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. The southern states. That is where you will find more of a man-animal conflict also happen. Now, leopard population declined in few regions. Which regions? Shivalik Hills and the Gangetic Plains. They recorded a significant decline, right? In Odisha, the number of leopards have dropped. In Uttarakhand, the population has declined. And we know and we have talked about the reasons as well. So this is the table comparing the population numbers from one particular census, that is 2018 to 2022. While it is impractical and not at all advisable for you guys to start learning the changes, but in terms of the geographical regions, right, the four major geographical regions, that is what you can keep in mind. So in the region of the Shivalik Hills and the Gangetic Plains, the leopard population is close to around 1200. That has marked a slight increase. Having said that, there are regions where the population has not increased to that extent. In central or here, overall you observe that, rather, I apologize. So here in Shivalik Hills and Gangetic Plains, that has basically declined. Why? Observe the maximum decline happening in the region of Uttarakhand, also in northern Bihar around the region of Valmiki Tiger Reserve. Now, in Uttar Pradesh, it has increased substantially, but in Uttarakhand, the decline has been massive. In central India and eastern Ghats, the increase has been substantial, 88-20. Then western Ghats, again a slight increase. In northeastern hills and Brahmaputra plains, the increase has been massive. The reason for such massive increase is basically why? There are multiple reasons which are cited in the report. One of the reason is that now actual reportage has happened. Now you have had proper enumeration and count, which was not the case previously. That is what is responsible for that increase. Okay, so where maximum increase has happened in terms of percentage, that is northeastern hills and Brahmaputra floodplains. Where the decrease has happened, Shivalik and the Gangetic plains. Okay, so that is something which you can keep in mind. Right now, conservation status, IUCN, vulnerable, and in sites as well as Wildlife Protection Act, maximum conservation included in Appendix 1 of sites and Schedule 1 of Wildlife Protection Act. Right? Now, let us take a look at the practice question. Here, consider the following statements in the context of leopard population in India. Shivaliks and Western Ghats together consist of the largest population of leopards in India. Odisha and Uttarakhand have indicated a decline in the population of leopards. Let me know what is the correct answer. Danish CITES basically is a convention, which is Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Flora and Fauna. Okay. So here, Shivaliks and Western Ghats together, do they consist of the largest population of leopards? No, they don't. Largest population of leopards is where? In the region of central India. That is where the population is more than 8,000, 8,800. Shivaliks and the Western Ghats put together comes out to be close to around 4,500. Still almost around half. Okay. So Central India is where, and Eastern India, Eastern Ghats is where it will be maximum, right? So this is incorrect. Odisha and Uttarakhand have indicated a decline. That is correct. Largest population of leopards is in which state? Do let me know. So here the correct answer is B, that is 2 only. Largest population is in MP. Very good. And in terms of the maximum number, the states that are MP, Maharashtra, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. That is again something you have to keep in mind. Okay, the southern part of the country where you will find a variety of vegetation and natural landscape which is still protected and maintained. Now then, about the global methane tracker. Now this is also vital. Why? Because there is an increasing awareness about the role of methane when it comes to global warming. Methane is one of the biggest contributors to global warming overall. It is a greenhouse gas, and here we have to understand that per molecule, the global warming potential of methane is higher than that of carbon dioxide per molecule. Okay, so when we talk about per molecule, the radiative forcing or global warming potential of methane is higher than CO2. What is also known as radiative forcing, the ability to heat and increase the temperature. But then, is methane the bigger contributor of warming, or is carbon dioxide a bigger contributor of warming? What do you think? Is methane a bigger contributor? No. It is carbon dioxide which is a bigger contributor. So why not methane? Because of 2 reasons. First reason being, methane has a very short life cycle. That is, it naturally disintegrates in the atmosphere. By reacting with hydroxide ions, it basically forms carbon dioxide and water vapor. So as a consequence, you don't have methane existent in the atmosphere for a long period of time. And second reason, that the amount of methane which is present in the atmosphere is very, very less as compared to the amount of carbon dioxide. Very, very minuscule level. So first reason, it is short-lived. Second reason, the concentration is very low. That is why its impact on warming is also lower. Now, this is a report which is released by IEA, International Energy Agency, right? And that releases the report Global Methane Tracker 2024. So here, methane emissions from fuel usage in 2023 reached their highest level overall. Okay? But here, what can you extract out of it? Basically, I will just give you the certain graphs and data pointers from which you can have a trend analysis. I don't want you to go into the nuances of this report now. Just look at the broader trends which are indicated. So this report talks about the sources of emission. This report talks about the countries which are emitting and the sub-sources as well. That is within the energy sector, for example, where there is more emission, etc. What do you think? Which sector is the biggest source of methane emission? What do you think? Which is the biggest source? So that is a question which UPSC has asked previously, but the probability of that being repeated is also very high. Very good, Vishal. And in terms of anthropogenic, it is agriculture, but other than that, you have wetlands. Wetlands become a very large source of emission. So here, the sources of methane emission for the year 2023. So here you will observe wetlands. Wetlands have the maximum amount of emission, followed by agriculture sector. Then you have energy. Now within energy, the proportion of oil is more. Then you have coal. Then you have natural gas and then bioenergy. Then after that, waste. the open waste dumping, etc., which tends to happen. That is also going to generate methane. Because why? Whenever any degradation or decomposition tends to happen, that is where you basically have methane being produced as a byproduct. That is when it is emitted. And you have some of the other sources, then you have the burning of the biomass. So here, all these are anthropogenic. These three that you see, these are anthropogenic. That is human induced. Right, most of them, and much of this is also in fact human induced. But you see, in the regions where you have oil fields, whenever you carry out exploration or extraction of oil or natural gas, there also methane emission takes place. So in various different areas, there is natural emission of methane. Now, wetlands, they capture so much amount of carbon stock within them. Now, whenever a destruction of wetland happens or due to increased global warming, let's suppose evaporation of water in the wetlands happen, immediately methane is also released. There is a bigger fear that if permafrosts of the world, that is the permanently frozen areas in the higher latitudes, particularly in the northern hemisphere, due to global warming, as this permafrost is starting to melt, that will also lead to methane emission and continued methane emissions. Right? Now, wetlands, basically, how do they produce methane? So that is by evaporation of water. Because what do you have in wetlands? Wetlands are natural water bodies, many of the times artificial as well, where you have terrestrial plants as well. Right? Now, as a consequence, many of the plants, they get submerged as well. Now here, let's suppose this plant dies, or overall, if the plant is functioning, the plant will capture carbon dioxide in the process of photosynthesis. And there, it will produce the organic compounds. These organic compounds will be trapped in the wetland. Now, here, one of the organic compound is methane, which is produced. Now, if the water is, let's suppose, evaporated, or even from the natural air-water interface, that methane can be released. However, the natural release of methane is not very high when the wetland is well maintained. If the wetland is degraded with no water which is still there, then a lot of methane is released. Okay? Now, then methane emission from the sources of energy, that is the energy sources. So here, oil is the biggest contributor, followed by coal. This is your coal. This is oil. Then after that, you have natural gas and even bioenergy. Okay? These are some of the large contributors of methane emission. Now then, changes in atmospheric methane concentration, if you will observe. So this has indicated a kind of a increase, regular increase in terms of the amount of methane which has been emitted. Right? So atmospheric methane emissions over a period of time, they might have changed ever so slightly, but here observe the growth in terms of the methane emission. It has been regular. Then close to 70% of the methane emission is carried out by few of the major emitters, 10 emitting countries itself. And that is majorly by the fossil fuels, now in various stages of fossil fuel. That is exploration, when you start the drilling, exploration and extraction of methane. Then after that, when you consider the refining process, there also you have methane emission. Then when you consider transportation of fossil fuels, transportation, and even when at the point of distribution, when there is marketing, that is also where methane is released. So even at the stage of marketing. So that is why fossil fuels, both in active and in their passive presence and roles, they end up being the emitters of methane. In order to get rid of this problem, you had various different countries particularly led by US and the EU, they signed the Global Methane Pledge. This Global Methane Pledge was signed when? When we talk about the Methane Pledge, so you have Global Methane Pledge. When was this signed? So this aims to reduce the methane emission by 30% by the year 2030. So this was initiated by US and EU. And when was it signed? So here it was signed at Conference of Parties number 26 to United Nations Framework Convention to Climate Change that was held in Glasgow. When? In December 2021. The aim to reduce emission by 30% by the year 2030. Is India a member of this Global Methane Pledge? No. India is not a member of this. Why? Because India knows that it was first of all not consulted before the formation of the pledge. And secondly, India knows that it would also mean curbing the amount of activities in its agricultural sector. And presently, we are not at that stage to reduce the agricultural usage. Now, this report has also indicated that large-scale events, for example, oil leaks and leaks from the natural oil fields, that also becomes a very important contributor and long-term contributor to methane emission. So large-scale methane emissions have been detected by the satellites. One of the satellites which has been launched to track the methane emission from the oil regions and the oil producing areas is the Methane Sat. Okay, that is one of the satellites for the tracking. So detected by satellites, right? So that rose by more than 50% in 2023. So emissions events detected have increased partially because of the leaks around the world, including blowout in Kazakhstan that went on for 200 days. You also had a few years back a similar kind of blowout in the region of Assam as well. So that is where these large-scale events are the big contributors. Now let us take a look at the question. Consider the following statements about methane emissions as indicated by Global Methane Tracker report. Emission from fossil fuel like coal outpaces the emission from natural gas. Emission from agriculture is the largest anthropogenic source for methane. Emission generated by wastes is more than the emission generated by the biomass burning. Which of the above is or are correct here? What do you think? So here, if you take a look at the first, emission from fossil fuel like coal outpaces the emission from natural gas. That is true. The largest emission in the field of energy is from oil, then followed by coal, because still the usage of coal is much higher. Then comes natural gas and then comes bioenergy. Emission from agriculture is the largest anthropogenic source. Now, which part of agriculture are we talking about? For example, let's suppose even when you carry out animal husbandry, there also methane is emitted by the bovine and the milch cattle. Then, for example, let's suppose you are growing paddy, rice cultivation. There also water is stagnant for a long period of time in the process of flood irrigation. So the evaporation of water also leads to production of methane, right? Wherever there is organic product which is being generated by natural measures as well, there along with that a byproduct is methane emission. Then emission generated by waste is more than the emission generated by the burning of biomass. This is also correct. So which of them are correct? The answer is D, right? Stubble burning will also produce methane. Yes, along with various other pollutants like sulfates, nitrates, stubble burning will also produce methane. But in large areas, it will also, in larger quantities, it will also end up releasing carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide in greater proportion. Okay. Now, then after that, the Global E-Waste Monitoring Report, that was 2024, which took a stock of what is the e-waste which is generated and the handling capacity. So here from this particular area, what is it that you have to extract for your prelims? First of all, the status of capacity or status of waste generation, first of all. Right? That is what you have to keep in mind. Secondly, the handling capacity of the waste. What you can also expect in the examination is the composition of the waste. What does e-waste exactly compose of in terms of the waste generated? Then after that, the handling capacity we have already talked about, and global status. That is per capita waste generation. How much waste is generated in which geographical region? Waste generation, and also waste handling. Right? Which geographical region has got the poorest waste handling capacity? These are the things that you have to summarize for your prelims. You don't have to be entangled in the entire report. Okay? Now, here if you take a look at it, now which is the organization which releases this report? That also becomes important. So UNITAR, or United Nations Institute for Training and Research, has released the Global E-Waste Monitor 2024. Okay. Now, world's generation of e-waste is outpacing the handling capacity of e-waste. If, let's suppose, e-waste generation and the way in which we handle the e-waste, both of them would have increased proportionately, we would not have faced a problem. But the e-waste generation is much more, our handling capacity is much less. So that is where the world's generation of e-waste is rising 5 times faster than the documented e-waste recycling ability. Right? A record 62 million tons of e-waste was generated, which is expected to reach 82 million tons in 2030. But again, do not learn the data pointers. Just know the composition of it. Now, how much of it is handled and in what way it is handled? So around 13.8 billion kg is documented as formally collected and recycled in a proper manner. This is the waste which is properly recycled and properly handled. 16 billion kg is estimated to be collected outside the formal mechanism in high and upper middle income countries. Do we lie in this category? No, we don't. So then comes our category. Another 18 billion kg is handled mostly by the informal sector in low and lower middle income countries. Right? Remainder 14 billion is dispersed as residual waste in landfills worldwide. That is almost unaccounted for. So overall, the trend, the waste which is handled properly is more than the waste which goes into residual waste. Is that correct? No. The waste which is handled properly is the minimum. Okay? Now, the waste which is generated in the informal sector, in the high income countries, is it more? No. Waste which is handled by the informal sector is more in low and middle income countries. Okay? So, this kind of a trend analysis you have to do. Now, e-waste generation versus collection. So, a drop in documented collection and recycling rate from what was 22.3% in 2022 to only around 20% by 2030. Why? Because the generation, the amount of waste which is generated is exponentially higher as compared to our increase in the capacity. Increase in the capacity is limited and the generation is very, very high. Okay. Then composition of e-waste. What is the e-waste composed of? So here it contained in majority 31 billion kg of metals, 17 billion kg of plastics, and 14 billion kg of other materials such as composite materials, right? Other things like that. So largest constituent of e-waste is what? Metals. Major constituent. Major constituent is metal. Okay. Now, when we take a look at the global scenario, so there Europe has the highest rate of documented formal collection, which is expected, and Africa has the lowest rate of the handling capacity. The waste collection and processing, that is very low. In many parts of Africa, it is below 1%. Okay. Now, here, when we talk about, let's suppose the amount of waste generated per capita. So, amount of waste generated per capita is highest in Europe, followed by Oceania. Oceania is which region? The region of Australia, New Zealand, the island groups thereby. That is Oceania. So, per capita waste generation is highest in Europe, followed by Oceania, then followed by Americas. Whereas, when we talk about per capita collection and recycling ability, that is again where it follows the similar trajectory. That is Europe, followed by Oceania, and then followed by the Americas. So, highest waste generated and highest waste collected per capita in both of the cases, Europe. Okay, let us take a look at the practice question and do let me know what the answer is. So consider the following statements about the Global E-Waste Tracker 2024. The report is published by UNITAR and ITU. The amount of e-waste generated has seen a proportionate rise in waste handling capacities. Highest per capita waste generation is observed in North America. What do you think is the correct answer in this case? Do let me know. Kanchan, wetland is the largest source of methane emission, but it is not anthropogenic, is it? It is natural source, right? Now here, what do you think is the answer? Report is published by UNITAR and ITU. So here, it is published by UNITAR only, right? The amount of e-waste generated has seen a proportionate rise in waste handling capacities. No. Waste handling capacities have not increased to the same extent. Highest per capita waste generation is observed where? In Europe, followed by Oceania, followed by North America. So here, what is the correct answer? C, all three. Why? It was asking which of them are incorrect. Okay, so that is what you have to again concentrate upon. So all those who have marked D here, please keep in mind, again here incorrect has been asked. Okay, so the correct answer is going to be C, right? Now, Global Forest Watch. Global Forest Watch is a report tracking the forest and the changes in the forest cover across the world, including the tropics, including India as well, and that is released by the World Resource Institute. Now, that is an important report which gives an idea about the green cover and how it has been changing, and also the reasons for the change. Okay, so it has reported that India has lost close to 2.33 million hectares of tree cover as compared to 2000, equivalent to 6% decline in the tree cover. Now, this is a report released by World Resources Institute, WRI. Now here, it is an open source web application to monitor the changes in the global or green cover, which can be accessed by whichever party is interested. The world last year lost about 37,000 square kilometers of tropical primary forest. Now, amongst the reasons which are cited, what are the primary reasons for the loss of forest? One of the primary reason is extension of agriculture, bringing newer areas under cultivation. Extension of agriculture. Then other than that, infrastructure, building. Then other than that, collection of wood for fuel or lumbering. Right? Then other than that, urbanization or urban pressure, in the sense that the urban area and their space keeps on increasing. That puts stress on the forested region. Right? So these are your major reasons for loss of forest. Other than that, activities like mining, etc. also happens. You see, in countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, in these countries, the prime reason for deforestation has been to increase the area under cultivation of palm oil. These are the largest producers of palm oil and largest exporters of palm oil in the world. So, prime reason for deforestation is that. That is where these countries have been under global limelight for some time now. Here, Brazil, DRC and Bolivia top the ranking in terms of the loss of tropical forest. You see, tropical forests are much more important to conserve. Why? Yesterday also we had talked about it, that tropical forests have increased number of species. The amount of biodiversity is higher. Secondly, the leaf density is higher, so the organic product which is produced, the gross primary productivity is also in a way higher. When these tropics, they lose their forest cover, that means in the winter season, the overall ability for storing carbon reduces. Why? Because in the temperate region, the conifers in particular, they will be frozen during the winter, or they would have shed their leaves during the winter. It is a tropical forest which will be trapping the carbon, providing oxygen during the winter time as well. So that is why tropics, for biodiversity and carbon sequestration, forests are much more vital. Deforestation rates globally increased by more than 3%. Right? Now, the country, in our country, when we talk about India-specific findings, so we have lost humid primary forests by almost 4.1% from 2002 to 2023. Now, 95% of the tree cover loss has been within natural forest. Now, those of you who have watched the India State of Forest report, there also we have discussed that the latest report which has been released in December, that also discusses about the fact that in the naturally forested area, in the reserved forested region, there also the forest cover has experienced a major decline. Right? Now, the Global Forest Watch data showed that 5 states accounted for 60% of all tree cover losses between 21 and 23. Any guesses in which geographical region of India these 5 major states will be located, where the rate of deforestation is highest? It is always very good. It is always in the northeastern region. In northeastern region, all these events are happening simultaneously. Extension of agriculture, infrastructure, mining, lumbering, urbanization, all of this is exerting pressure. So Assam had the maximum tree cover loss. You see that natural tree cover loss has led to the degradation of land in Assam. That has impacted the water cycle, the natural recharge of atmospheric vapor. That has impacted the amount of precipitation in Assam. Because the amount of rainfall in Assam has been impacted, the consequence of that has been that there has also not been enough amount of grass growth. The green grasses, right? In some regions of Kaziranga, for example, you have the growth of what is known as elephant grasses, which can grow substantially within a short span of time. So the grasses, they are not that green anymore. They are a bit pale. Now, what that means for species like the lesser florican, they don't have the natural camouflage. So that is why these critically endangered species, their population is further risked. Okay, so that is how each of these events, they'll have a cascading impact in the long run. Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland and Manipur. These are the entire belt of the northeastern states where the deforestation has been very high, right? Climate change also plays a role in forest loss, but then more than that, it is the anthropogenic factor or human-induced forest loss that kicks in a feedback cycle which leads to degradation of the forest as well. Okay. Now, as per FAO, rate of deforestation in India was a whopping 6.5 lakh hectares per year between 2015 and 2020. That is the second highest worldwide. Okay. And data showed that India lost 35,000 hectares of tree cover even due to forest fire. Now, those of you who have seen the India State of Forest Report 2023, which are the states where the forest fires are very common? Do let me know. Which are the states in India where forest fire is a common phenomenon? So, as the India State of Forest Report has indicated, you have the states of Uttarakhand, then you have Odisha, right? These are the major states where forest fire events have been massive, and then other than that, you also have the region of Chhattisgarh. There also lot of forest fire. The number or the frequency of forest fire in India, has it been increasing from 2021 or has it been decreasing from 2020 and 2021? That trend, if you take a look at it, the number of forest fire incidents in India has been on a decline since 2020 and 2021. These are the details which have been highlighted in the India State of Forest Report. Okay. Now, let us take a look at the question. Consider the following statements about forests in India. Majority of the loss of forest have been observed outside the natural forested region. Take a look at the question and do let me know which is the correct answer in this. How many of the above is or are correct? A, B, C and D. So here, if we take a look at the entire question carefully, C, B, okay. Majority of the loss of forest has been observed outside the natural forested region. Is that statement correct? No. It has been within the naturally forested region where there has been a majority of the loss of forest. Agricultural extension is a major reason accounting for deforestation in India. Is that correct? Yes. The report for Global Forest Watch is released by Water Resource Institute. Is that correct? No. So read the statements carefully. It is released by WRI, World Resource Institute, not the Water Resource Institute. So here, which of them are correct? A, only one becomes correct, right? So all those who have given the answer A, good job. Now, the State of Climate in Asia Report 2023, which has been released by WMO, World Meteorological Organization. Now, World Meteorological Organization has stated a report or released a report, which it does quite frequently, that Asia faced the most disasters associated with climate change in the year 2023. Now, as per this report, there has been a detailed study which has been carried out about glacial loss, the number of deaths which have happened, climate-induced floodings which have happened, glacial lake outburst floods which have happened. So the entire report is a detailed coverage of that. So here, what are the key findings? Number of extreme weather events in Asia has been very massive. So compared to 2022, the reported disaster events in the region were lesser by only 2. Nonetheless, they were lesser, right? So compared to 2022, the climate-induced disasters were less by 2. Okay? Then the mean temperature over Asia has been extraordinarily high. 2023 marked the second warmest year in the recent era. But that is not important. Once you are appearing for the exam in 2025, nobody is going to ask you about the temperature in 2023. But the other trends, they can ask whether the climate-induced events have been increasing, decreasing, those kind of questions, right? Glaciers in high mountain regions in Asia. So particularly in the region of Eastern Himalayas and the Tian Shan region, Tian Shan area to the north of the Pamirs, that is where the glacial mass loss has been massive. However, there is a region where the glacial mass has been increasing. Which is the region where the glacial mass has been increasing in Asia? That is the region of the Karakoram Mountains. And that is what we refer to as the Karakoram anomaly. Again, important area for the exam. The ocean around Asia, particularly Northwest Pacific Ocean, has observed increased temperature, average temperature, occurrence of almost heat wave-like conditions. Findings for India. So severe heat waves, they start occurring much earlier, which leads to the loss of crops like wheat. Then more tropical cyclones have started to hit the eastern and the western coastline. Floods have become more common because of climate-induced frequent rainfall and massive amount of discrepancy in the distribution of rainfall. And glacial lake outburst floods in regions like Sikkim, etc., there the incidence, the frequency, and also the disaster-causing ability, that has also increased massively. So that is the overall report. Let us solve the question associated. Consider the following statements about the global climate as indicated by the State of Climate in Asia 2023 report released recently. It is released by IMO and IPCC. The glacial loss has been the highest in the Tian Shan and the Western Himalayan regions. So here, what is the correct answer? This is an easy question, the easiest question across the entirety of the discussion. I don't want you to get it wrong. So the first statement is incorrect. It is released by World Meteorological Organization, right? So that is incorrect. Here, Western Himalayas is incorrect. Eastern Himalayas is the correct one. So this is also incorrect. So here, which of them are incorrect? The answer is C, both 1 and 2. I hope by the end of the session, you start paying attention to the correct and the incorrect ones. Okay? Please don't jump to the answer. Now, certain species and protected areas which have remained in news over the early part of last year. We are going to come up with another series and another set where we are going to cover the current affairs after the month of May as well. So don't think about it that this is the entire coverage. We will ensure that your revision is ensured for the entire duration what is required for the prelims. But till the month of May, which were the ones in news? Purple frog. Purple frog is one of those unique species which has been found in the region around the Western Ghats, in particular around the area of Silent Valley and the Idukki region in Kerala, extending up till Tamil Nadu. Now, Tamil Nadu has set up a special fund for the conservation of these purple frogs, and that is why these frog species, they have come in news. So the government of Tamil Nadu established the Tamil Nadu Endangered Species Conservation Fund to conserve and protect the purple frog and other lesser known endangered species. It is also known as the Maveli frog or the pig-nosed frog. Now, what is important for the purple frog is it is believed to have coexisted with dinosaurs, and it has got the similar kind of a morphology as the frog family in Seychelles as well. That is why oftentimes they are also referred to as the living fossils of the dinosaur era, which gives you an idea about the morphology and the body structure which existed during the dinosaur era. And the unique part is the kind of a snout, the rat-like shape that the frog has. That is also quite unique. Then it remains underground for most of the year. That is why sighting it becomes incredibly difficult, except for 2 to 3 weeks during the monsoon when it comes out to mate. Naturally found in which region in India? Around the Nilgiris, right? So Tamil Nadu, Kerala, some parts of Karnataka. That is where you will find them. IUCN Endangered Wildlife Protection Act, Schedule 1. Okay? Now, this is the easiest question. Do get this correct. In which geographical region of India can the purple frog be found? Malabar Coast, Western Ghats, Malabar Coast, Deccan Traps and Vindhya Mountains. So here, the correct answer is going to be A, in the region of Western Ghats. If we talk about the states, Kerala and Tamil Nadu, eastern part of Kerala and then the northwestern part of Tamil Nadu in the adjoining region. Then Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, the region where you find these purple frogs, which is amongst the largest protected areas across the country. That had also been in news owing to the census or the counting of the various species which had been done. So, what are the details associated with Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve? That is where you have to concentrate upon. So, it was the first biosphere reserve in India, one of the first biosphere reserves in India, established way back in 1986. It is also a part of UNESCO's Man and Biosphere Program. Okay, the MAB, Man and Biosphere Program. Okay, the total area of the reserve is 5,520 square kilometer, largest protected forest region in India. The entire area from Mukurthi to Satyamangalam to Bandipur, the Wayanad, then Mudumalai, Nagarhole, the entire protected region has got or is constituted in the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. Overall, in the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve region, the population of tigers is one of the highest in India. This Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve is so vital because this is also the region which experiences seasonal migration of species, particularly the species who migrate from the region of Eastern Ghats to Western Ghats in order to gain access to water and food sources during the dry months and the dry season. That is why you will find a lot of herbivore population in that area. And because of the herbivore population, the carnivore population is also present. At one point of time in the history of the subcontinent, Asiatic lions would also be found in the region slightly around the central part of Karnataka, but now you don't have them to be present anymore. Tiger population is there and you also have elephant population in large numbers, but along with that, you have species like the black panther. All of those unique species you will find to be present, right? So it is located in the Nilgiri Mountains of the Western Ghats, encompasses the part of Tamil Nadu, northeastern part of Kerala, as well as the southern part of Karnataka. The annual rainfall, observe the range of annual rainfall in the entirety of the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, from 50 centimeter to almost 700 centimeter, which tells you what? That from evergreen vegetation, dense moist evergreen vegetation to even scrublands, you will find a variety of natural vegetation, due to which the species variety will also be very high. Temperature variation also is massive between summer to winter. So tropical evergreen forest, montane sholas, it is in these sholas that you will find the species like Nilgiri tar. Nilgiri tar is to be found in these areas, particularly again around the region of Idukki and northeastern part of Kerala and northwestern part, the contiguous zone with Tamil Nadu. Grassland, semi-evergreen forest, moist deciduous, dry deciduous and thorn forest. A rich variety. Thorn forest mostly in the part of the region of Karnataka to the north of Bangalore Plateau and also in the region of central portion or to the adjoining areas of northwestern Tamil Nadu. That is where you will find thorn forest and scrubland. Now, the major protected areas, Mudumalai, Wayanad, Bandipur, Nagarhole, Mukurthi, Silent Valley, and also Satyamangalam. Satyamangalam Tiger Reserve. Silent Valley is situated in the region again around Kerala. So these are the various protected areas and this is a contiguous zone. Okay. Now the question which can be framed from this. So here, consider the following statement about the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. It serves as a wildlife corridor between the eastern and the western Ghats. It is one of the largest protected areas in the country. It consists of many important protected regions. How many of the above statements is or are correct? What do you think in this? How many of them are correct? Very good. So the first statement, it serves as the wildlife corridor between the eastern and the western Ghats. It is correct. It is one of the largest protected areas in the country. That is also correct. It consists of many important protected regions like Bandipur, correct. Mukurthi, correct. Wayanad, correct. Sheshachalam, incorrect. Where is Sheshachalam situated? Andhra Pradesh, right? In the eastern Ghats. That is where you have the region where you have the natural presence of red sanders. Red sanders is a dry deciduous kind of vegetation where a lot of smuggling is done. So this Sheshachalam is incorrect. Silent Valley is also correct. However, the third statement becomes incorrect. So here the correct answer becomes B, that is only 2. Okay. Now, Satyamangalam Tiger Reserve, that has also been in news. So here the location and the attribute, that's it. That is where you have to restrict yourself. So, junction of eastern and western Ghats in the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve itself in the Erode district of Tamil Nadu. It is contiguous with Mudumalai, Bandipur and BR Tiger Reserve and Sanctuary in Karnataka. Right? So that is where you will find a natural wildlife corridor for species of tigers. Together, these reserves forming the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve have the biggest tiger population across the world at over 280 tigers. That is the most massive. Now, local geography, rivers Bhavani, Moyar and Noyal. Now, Moyar is the one which drains through the region of Bandipur. Bhavani is a tributary of Kaveri. Like that, you can also serve the interest or the requirement of places in news. Now, consists of southern tropical dry thorn forest, mixed deciduous forest, semi-evergreen forest as well. It is subtropical and dry. Right? Because the advancing monsoons, they don't bring much of a rainfall in this region. Some of the retreating as well as the northeastern monsoon, they bring rainfall. Summers are hot and dry, monsoons are wet and cooler with rivers which are flooding. So that is why on the sides of the river, you will also find lot of forested regions. So the riparian forest, that is also to be found in large numbers. Okay. Now, the Nameri Tiger Reserve was in news. So in which state, first of all, Nameri Tiger Reserve is situated? I will give you a hint. This was in news because of sighting of a unique species, that is the Himalayan serow. So where is it situated? Assam. Very, very good. So that was in news for the sighting of Himalayan serow. We will take a look at that. So here, where in Assam in particular it is situated? Immediately to the south of Arunachal Pradesh, around the region of Pakui or the Pakke Tiger Reserve, right? So located in the northern Sonitpur district of Assam, foothills of Arunachal Pradesh, to the south, the Piedmont zone. Yesterday we had discussed the Piedmont zone. That is where it shares its northern boundary with the Pakui Tiger Reserve. The reserve comprises of Nameri, Sonai Rupai Wildlife Sanctuary and the Nadwar and the Balipara Reserve Forest. Now, all of this you won't be able to retain. Look at the location. That's it. Location is at the boundary zone of Assam here, right? Immediately in the foothills of Arunachal. You have Arunachal Pradesh above. Defined by the Jia Boreli River as well as the Bor Dekorai River in the boundary zones. Okay. Now, vegetation here will be what in this region of Assam? The amount of rains are high, but in certain areas you will also find the presence of grasses. So, tropical evergreen and semi-evergreen vegetation, moist deciduous forest, the cane brakes as well as grassland. Cane brakes which are also present, that also provides the facility to lot of herbivores. Then Himalayan serow was spotted in the region. So that is why this becomes important for the sighting of Himalayan serow. A question can be framed for Himalayan serow as well. Okay, so what is this Himalayan serow? It is known for this unique horn, and it is a kind of high altitude herbivore which is to be found in the region of the Himalayas at a greater altitude. So resembles a cross between a goat, a donkey, a cow and a pig. Okay, several species of serows, all of them are found in Asia. So endemism is again something UPSC has been stressing upon for the past 2 to 3 years, that this species is endemic to which region. Himalayan serow is restricted to the Himalayan region. Okay, they are known to be found in eastern, central and western Himalayas, but not in the trans-Himalayan region. Yesterday we had taken a look at the Himalayan wolf. Can Himalayan wolf be found in the trans-Himalayan region? What do you think? Can Himalayan wolf or is Himalayan wolf found in trans-Himalayan region? Yes, they are. In the region of Tibet, in that area, you will find the Himalayan wolf. But Himalayan serow is not to be found in the region of Trans-Himalayas. So they are typically found at altitude of 2000 and 4000 meters. Sighting them is very rare. Conservation status IUCN vulnerable as per CITES Appendix 1 as per Wildlife Protection Act Schedule 1. Okay. Now, let us take a look at the question. Consider the following statements about Himalayan serow recently in news. It has been listed as endangered by IUCN, mainly found in the regions to the north of the Pakke Tiger Reserve. It is a high altitude herbivore. Which of them is or are correct? What do you think? What is the correct answer in this? Again, an easy question overall. So here, if you take a look at it, what is the conservation status as per IUCN? Vulnerable, not endangered. It is vulnerable. So here, this is incorrect. Mainly found in regions to the north of Pakke Tiger Reserve? No, to the south of Pakke Tiger Reserve. So this is incorrect. Then it is a high altitude herbivore. That is correct. So here the correct answer is going to be C. That is 3 only. Okay. Now, then coming to the last topic of the day, that is the Gupteshwar Forest. The Gupteshwar Forest region has been declared as the Biodiversity Heritage Site. Now, where is it situated? It is situated in the region of Odisha. Okay. So that is where the Gupteshwar Forest is situated. So here, this forest, so what is a biodiversity heritage site? The condition of that, we will also take a look into it. But other 3 biodiversity heritage sites in Odisha, that is also important for prelims. So this forest, the Gupteshwar Forest, that has got large cultural significance because of the sacred groves. Sacred groves, they become important this year because of the Supreme Court observation for the Oran Grove region, which has been declared as a community forest. So that is why sacred groves become important. Where are Oran groves situated? So please cover organizations, conventions. Yes, that will be covered prior to the prelims. We will cover the entire thing in the marathon sessions. So here, sacred grove, Oran groves are situated in Rajasthan. So all those groves, that is something you have to keep in mind. this year it becomes important. Species of fauna: mugger, crocodile, the Kangar Valley gecko, like a lizard, sacred grove bush frog, that is to be found. Other 3 biodiversity heritage sites of Odisha, you have Mansarasu or Mandasaru, that is situated in the Kandhamal district. Then in Gajapati district, you have the Mahendragiri biodiversity heritage site. And then in Badgar and Bolangir, you have the Gandhamardhan biodiversity heritage site. So what exactly constitutes the biodiversity heritage site? And which is the first biodiversity heritage site in the country? The first biodiversity heritage site was the Nallur Tamarind Grove. Where is it situated? Tamarind Grove. It is situated in Karnataka, near Bangalore, right? So that is where this Nallur Tamarind Grove is situated in Karnataka. Here you have the presence of vital sacred groves, but along with that, you also have the Chola architecture, which is preserved. So that is why it becomes important. In Karnataka, you have many of these biodiversity heritage sites. So these are the areas that are unique, ecologically fragile ecosystems having rich biodiversity. So the conditions, or when any of one or more components of this are met, it is declared as biodiversity heritage site. So species richness, high endemism of the species, presence of rare, endemic and threatened species, keystone species if they are to be found, wild ancestors of domesticated species of plants or animals or their variants, and cultural or aesthetic value. Any of these, or if multiple of these are met, that is when you have the declaration as biodiversity heritage site. Now let me ask another question here. Let me see how many of us are able to give the correct answer. Declaration of a biodiversity heritage site is done as per which provision of the law? As per which act is biodiversity heritage site declared? And the second follow-up, who declares the region as a biodiversity heritage site? Is it done by the state government or is it done by the central government? What do you think? Let me know. Very good. So this is declared as per the provisions of Biodiversity Act 2002, right? National parks and wildlife sanctuaries, they are declared as per which act or as per which law? And the declaration of a biodiversity heritage site is done by the state government as per the provisions of Biodiversity Act, Diversity Act 2002. Okay, this is done by the state government. Declaration of national park and wildlife sanctuaries, that is done as per the provisions of Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Okay, so keep these things in mind. We will come up with more videos associated with the conventions, the laws, the legislations, the amendments which have happened throughout the span of the previous 12 to 18 months as well. As of now, for these 4 to 5 months, do revise this, do catalog this, and that brings us to the end of the session. If you have liked the content of the session, if you have liked the comprehensive coverage, do like the video and put it in the comment section. How many questions out of them were you able to mark it correctly? Those of you who want to facilitate the revision for this year's prelims, I strongly advise you to look at the entire playlist of the places in news that we have provided, along with the state of the forest report as well. And tomorrow again, we will have the Conquer Prelims session, which continues. So now we have the subjects of science and tech by Hima ma'am, then economy by Shyam sir, and then you have the government schemes and the social issues by Astha ma'am. If you are liking the endeavor of this Conquer Prelims, do let us know by commenting in the comment section, and do bless us with your like and subscribe button. Now, let us take a look at some questions if you have. What is biomagnification? Biomagnification is the accumulation of contaminants in the body over a period of time, but at the same time, as you move through the food chain, the amount of contaminant keeps on increasing. For example, the contaminant level, let's suppose at the level of phytoplanktons is going, or zooplanktons is going to be less. But by the time that you move up in the food chain to the level of, let's suppose, a tuna or a shark or a dolphin, that is when the contaminant level keeps on increasing. That is biomagnification. Can you explain, Manisha, a doubt from yesterday's session, can you explain in brief about the role of water table in base flow? So you see, when we talk about base flow, so here, let's suppose you have a stream which is there, or let me have a clearer image. So let's suppose this is the stream, and here underground you have the water table. But if the water table is higher in certain regions, right? So after some amount of rainfall, the water table pressure will increase. So that means its incursion of water into the river channel will increase. That means natural tendency of the river will be to overflow. So that increases the rate and the frequency of flooding, particularly in the peninsular India. Okay? Milankovitch cycle, Jaideep, is about the change in the a kind of an orbital shape of planet Earth from elliptical to circular, then slight change in the axis from around 21.5 to 24.5, as well as the wobbling of the axis, right, which is not always tilted in one direction. It can then be tilted in this and this. That changes the amount of solar insolation that is received, due to which the planet goes through an ice age every few thousand years, when the temperate regions, the land, the water, everything almost freezes. Okay? Now, with reference to metabolism of organisms, can you please explain the spore formation? So that is again associated with the increased and the reduced rate of metabolic activities associated with the climatic conditions when they change. Right? In the chart that you have shown, energy domain, it is natural gas which emits more than coal. No. I will provide the PDF. Take a look at it again. Natural gas emits less as compared to coal. Lumbering is when you cut down the trees for the fuel and the accumulation of wood. Okay? Right. Degree channel is, there is not much of a difference. So when you are talking about 9-degree channel, when you are talking about 8-degree channel, that is where the latitude passes through, serving a kind of a geographical divide. As well as when you talk about parallels are mostly associated with the land region. Degree channel mostly associated with water bodies. Okay, we'll restrict the session here today, and till we meet again, we will come up with the compilation of environment ecology as well as the geography questions and the portion relevant for your prelims. Do follow this Conquer Prelims and do continue to prepare. Till we meet again, take care. Goodbye. Thank you.